In today's show, trade season is sorta approaching in the NBA. Who might get dealt? What are the biggest hurdles and the biggest holdups? Plus, we preview the Blazers game against the New Orleans Pelicans. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we're talking trade season. It's sort of here. Plus, we'll talk who might get dealt, what are the obstacles, hurdles, and things in the way of those deals getting done. And then we'll look ahead to the Blazers matchup against the New Orleans Pelicans. They are finally back in action, headed to New Orleans, and when we're talking Blazer games these days, we're talking injury updates, so we'll get to all of that to close the show. But let's start with trade season. You are listening to Thursday, December 11th's program. December 15th is sorta, not really, but could be the start of NBA trade season. And while I don't think the Blazers are particularly likely to make a move in December, judging by the state of their team, the past track record of the front office and everything else, trades across the league and activity across the league is going to impact the Blazers both coming and going, whether they can rise or whether they're likely to have other teams to try to that may push them further down in the standings, et cetera, et cetera. But I think December 15th is notable for a couple reasons. There's a bunch of reporting out there. I'm going to share it with you here about what could or may happen here in the coming weeks. December 15th, to me, is not necessarily the start of trade season, but it is the start of earnest and honest trade negotiations. By the time you hit December 15th, you've played almost 30 games. Most teams will have hit the 25 plus mark, if not 28 by then. So people will know, it's more like 25 because the NBA Cup, but people will know what they are. People know, teams are going to know what they have and what they don't have and what they want to be and what they can't be and yada, 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 right? So, and December 15th is also the marker where most of the league can be traded. There are some players that signed based on when they signed contracts in the offseason that can't be traded till January 15th, but something like 80% of the league can be traded in December 15th. So instead of having, theoretical calls that you're sort of always making as an NBA front office, you can have more substantive calls and say like, hey, what would it take for you to do this? Or are you interested in, a player, or are you interested in picks? Or even get into the nitty gritty of actually hashing out deals. And as Jake Fisher of the Steinline reports, there is actually some incentive for teams to act early, and he notes that last year the Dennis Schroeder trade that the Warriors made right away was probably intentionally done quickly. The Warriors, of course, acquires Dennis Schroeder from the Brooklyn Nets on December 15th, like immediately sort of when quote-unquote trade season happens, and then they ended up packaging Schroeder in another deal, a multi-team trade that allowed them to get Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline. And that is because there is a new wrinkle in the CBA that says players acquired on or before December 16th are eligible to be aggregated again in future trades. Now, players can be traded again if they're acquired after that, but the aggregated is the key word. Without getting too deep into the weeds with how it works, basically, you're allowed to make trades that would include, say, let's call Dennis Schroeder for this example, Schroeder's salary as to make the math work in conjunction with other players on your team, as opposed to finding trades that work independently and then trading Schroeder in those independent trades. The aggregation of salary rules may incentivize some players to get traded early, or teams that say, hey, we might make this deal in early January because we kind of like it and it makes sense to go ahead and get it done because it allows you to flip players you acquire again. And the name of the game in the NBA is often flexibility. Some teams just say it and it means nothing. Other teams really practice what they preach. And if you are a team like a go for it type of team, like the Warriors were last year, older team with aspirations, keeping that flexibility open so you can always have more outs is valuable. So I think that's one thing to watch. Is there any activity right away, December 15th, December 16th, for smaller deals, sort of like fringy starters like Dennis Schroeder types, because those are incentivized to maybe get done earlier because of this new wrinkle in the CBA. And if you make these trades on December 17th, you lose that sort of aggregation window. The other big reporting here, Giannis Antetokounmpo is like, sort of, maybe, kind of gonna get traded. It seems the latest with the Antetokounmpo stuff seems to be pretty clear. There is certainly there seems to be fire where there's smoke, where this smoke is. It might be a campfire, right? But all Giannis Antetokounmpo would have to do is come out and say publicly, "I don't want to get traded." He hasn't done that. He hasn't said word one. We haven't heard from him. So all of this speculation seems to be driven by his agents, I think, and sort of the powers that be at the four-letter network. But I think what the real truth is that Giannis Antetokounmpo is openly considering his future not on the Bucks, and whether that happens now or this summer remains to be seen. But he is it seems very clear that at least there is the real consideration will be given by both Antetokounmpo's camp and the Bucks if they can find the right deal to make a move. Although I wouldn't put it past the Bucks to do something extremely aggressive in order to satisfy Giannis Antetokounmpo, because they've done that at basically every turn, albeit with diminishing returns over the last couple moves. So Giannis is out there. Sounds like Anthony Davis is out there because the Mavs are just open for business. According to Shams Charania of ESPN, the Pistons, Hawks, and Raptors are all expected to be suitors if and when, and it sounds like when, Anthony Davis is made available for trade. Whether those trades get done, we shall see. But Detroit, Atlanta, and Toronto, teams that are good-ish in the East. I think the Pistons are the best of those three by a lot. But in a wide open Eastern Conference, adding a player of that caliber, what does it take to add a player of that caliber? And if you do, how much championship equity do you have? Kind of a lot in the Eastern Conference, right? If you can make the finals, I don't know if you get a 50% split if you play Oklahoma City in the finals, but you have something like a 15 to 25% share of championship equity. I think being one of the three best teams in the East probably buys you real championship equity just because you have a very, very, very good chance of getting to the finals. I think there's real incentive there. The Mavs are also reportedly, according to Trania, willing to trade Daniel Gafford, who's a totally useful, helpful center. He would help a team if he ends up somewhere else. Klay Thompson, who is has useful moments, but I think is overall probably a negative player right now. But when Klay looks like Klay, he's still very special. Dude is one of the great shooters of all time. It's just he has a lot of nights where he does not look like Klay. He looks like Mikey. That's his little brother. Apologies to Mikey. That's the other Thompson brother. And then D'Angelo Russell, the Mavs are willing to trade him. Who among us in the NBA has not been in business with D'Angelo Russell and then been willing to trade him shortly thereafter? But if there is a name to know in the sweepstakes that is likely to get traded and you're a Trailblazers fan, it's this one. And that's why I saved it for the 8-minute mark of the program and didn't lead with it, because maybe I'm just bad at podcasting. No, I planned it this way, I promise. According to Jake Fisher of the Stein Line, if there's any player league-wide with a greater likelihood of being moved next Monday, I'm quoting from Fisher's latest from the Stein Line, the latest as I'm recording this on Wednesday evening, Chris Paul. So here's the deal with Chris Paul. The Clippers send him home. Kicked him off the team at 3 a.m. in Atlanta. Incredible legacy. Chris Paul, such a challenging coworker that he made his boss work in the middle of the night. God bless. But the Clippers, because of their financial situation, they can't outright cut Chris Paul and sign another player. Literally, by virtue of where they are in relation to the first apron and where their salary, the rest of their salary cap situation, if they cut Chris Paul, they will not be able to sign a player and stay below the apron. They literally could not do it. It's the machinations of the CBA would not allow them to field a full roster. So they have to trade Chris Paul. That's how this ends. He's either just lives in exile and they play with the dudes they have, or they trade him. So, and according to Fisher, the Clippers, although maybe somewhat embarrassed by I think Chris Paul is the greatest Clipper of all time. So doing the greatest Clipper of all time dirty and just sending him home because he's a challenging coworker are willing to find Chris Paul a place to play. play. And according to Fisher, I think play is the key word for Paul. When he was with the Clippers, he knew he was going to have a reserve role, but then he was like out of the rotation and they stunk. And then Paul, like, he's just a challenging dude. Like he's always been a challenging personality in a very public way. You can imagine what he's like behind closed doors. And so I think he was just really hard to work with, and decided that they didn't want to deal with him because he wasn't going to play, and he was challenging in all the ways that he can be. So according to Fisher's reporting in the Steinline, the Clippers are going to find a landing spot for Paul. They're going to work with him to find a place he wants to go, and part of where he wants to go is role. He wants to play. He played all 82 and started all 82 for the Spurs last year, and he was fine. He was pretty decent, particularly if you grade him on the curve of being 39 years old. He's a pretty good 39-year-old. He's a backup, but he played when he was healthy every night for the Warriors, right? He had an every night role. I think Paul wants to play. And so where could he play? If you are a Portland Trailblazer fan and you are so tired of them adding point guards born in the first 7 months of 1990, and you're really pining for them to add a point guard born in the 80s, I think if the Blazers could add Chris Paul to like Thursday's roster and play the freaking Pelicans with Chris Paul on the roster, yes, he would be very helpful. I think the problem is that when, presumably Drew Holiday gets back, and I'm assuming Scoot Henderson plays sometime in January into the new year, like, does Paul have a place in the roster? And if you only have a place in the roster for him for a month, is that a viable landing spot for him? I think no. I wonder what Paul's appetite for playing for a bad team is, although it might just be he wants to play. Maybe proximity to a championship is no longer a motivator. Certainly last year with the Spurs, that was not in the cards. So maybe it's just real role. I don't think the Blazers really have a real role for him. If you could just add Chris Paul from now to Christmas, which you can't if you trade for him, he's on the team, and you can't add him another way. Yeah, I think it would like Chris Paul for Ryan Rupert or whatever. Like dial it up. I think that would be like legitimately very helpful for the Blazers. But otherwise, I don't see it as particularly realistic. Speaking of the Blazers and not making trades, is anybody going to make trades? Kirk Goldsberry, in a piece in The Ringer, written today, published on Wednesday, December 10th, has an interesting take about why the existence of the Oklahoma City Thunder might muck up the whole trade market. Let's talk about that in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya? First, though, I want to tell you about Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. So right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. And what makes this even better is how simple Mint makes it the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price. Setup only takes a few minutes, and you can bring your own phone that you already got and your own phone number that you already love right along with you without any issues. Turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required $15 a month equivalent. Taxes and fees. Initial plan term only. Greater than 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. Today's program is also brought to you by your local neighborhood YMCA. That's right. It's the YMCA of Columbia-Willamette, where they believe everyone deserves to find their place to play, because they believe that play connects us, strengthens us, and brings our community together. Through their 3 pillars: youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility, the Y is your local nonprofit helping people of all ages move, grow, and belong across the Portland and Vancouver metro area. Let me tell you, I have recently become a member of a local YMCA chapter, and I'm loving it. They got a lap pool so I can get my swim on. They also have a family pool right there at the Y so I can take my kid. It's 90 degrees. It's warm. You could play with a small child after you get your workout in. They got full basketball courts so I can get shots up, pickleball so I can get in on the latest trends. Also, brand new workout equipment so I can get swole, get jacked, and then come record a podcast shortly thereafter. Plus, I'm a child of YMCA camps, and your child can be a child of YMCA camps too. They got camps, they got childcare and enrichment sites throughout the region, and the Y gives kids safe fun and safe places to learn, play, and build confidence all year long. So find your play at the Y. Visit ymcacw.org/pod. That's ymcacw.org/pod, or follow them on YouTube and Instagram at YMCACW. All right. So it's sort of trade season, right? I think more accurately, it is earnest negotiating season in the NBA. Come Monday, when we get to December 15th, real earnest negotiating from then until the first week of February when the trade deadline is. Like you're going to get whatever that is, 9 weeks of like legitimate discussions of, and I think that is that's meaningful, right? Is because you're going to get whatever that is, 55 days, 8 weeks, 55 days of like teams who know who they are, know what they want, and know what they need to be, and kind of know what the sort of the level they need to get to is, can earnestly enter into trade conversations with enough data and understanding to do so in a meaningful way. The problem is that the level that they need to get to is too dang high. The rent and the quality of the Thunder are too dang high. The Oklahoma City Thunder, I just, shortly before hitting record on this, I watched the NBA Cup games. I enjoyed the NBA Cup. I did not particularly enjoy the NBA Cup games tonight because they were mostly beatdowns. I liked watching the Spurs beat the Lakers. I think the Spurs are a really fun basketball team. I sort of liked the first, 17 minutes of the Thunder because they're so impressive. And then the game was over and I was bored and I went and did something else. But the Thunder beat the Suns in the Cup by 49 points tonight. Whoops. They're 24-1. You know where that one in the loss column came from, baby. And Kirk Goldsberry over at The Ringer wrote an interesting piece today. They'll be linked in the episode description for this episode, titled, "Where Will the Thunder's Dominance Clog Up the NBA Trade Market?" And basically, Goldsberry, and I'm not going to read you the story here, but I think it is a twofold unpacking. It is twofold reasoning here why it could clog up the trade market. The first one is because teams are potentially hesitant to go all in because the Thunder are so stinking good. They're just too talented. So cashing in your chips to chase them down in the spring of 2026 when they're coming off a championship, look like they could just like name their win total. Do they want to win 73 games? They could probably go for it and win it. Like whatever it is. They could pick the number right now. That's how good they look, right? They were the best team in the NBA last year, although they were tested in the playoffs for sure, and they look better this season, and they haven't even been fully healthy yet. They haven't played the guys who started in the finals have not started a game together this year. They're at one point they're going to be whole and they might be better than they've been, and they're freaking 24-1. They got the best defense of all time. They just are a special basketball team. And so there is, according to Goldsberry, and Goldsberry worked for the Spurs for a long time. He works for USA Basketball. Like he's plugged in, right? This is Kirk knows folks in the league. So he, in the story he talks about, asking around the league, and people are saying like, is now the time you want to go in? And I will say that during my time covering the Blazers, when I was on the beat and worked for the newspaper, I was a little more, not that I don't have those people's phone numbers anymore, but they ain't text me back like they were when I was like, had a little more reporting juice. But like when I was like actually sort of plugged into the league and doing this as a full-time job and then and had real sources that I talked to with some regularity, I would hear the same things about the Kevin Durant Warriors. Is that I was like, why would we make a move? Like, well, what's the deal? Particularly teams in the Western Conference, is they were hesitant to, like, Daryl Morey was unafraid with Houston, but other teams were like, why are we cashing in now? Like over the next 2 seasons, that's the best team in the world. Like, why do it now? Like, just stack your chips and get ready for what's beyond. Obviously, that's not a good idea in my personal opinion. I don't really buy that. I don't buy that first reasoning. I don't buy it. The Thunder are not too good. If you're in the Eastern Conference, the Thunder are not too good. You only have to beat them 4 times, and you just have to survive to freaking June and get lucky. That's the trick of sports. You have to stay in the hunt to have good luck, break your way. So obviously go for it. Stay in the hunt. Have good luck. Break your way. If Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get hurt in the fourth quarter, the Pacers are maybe NBA champions. Stay in the hunt. Have luck. Break your way. But I think the actual truth is that what Goldsberry's other point here in this story is, and I think this is the really an interesting thing to kind of consider, is that when you're talking about these big trades, the Giannis Antetokounmpo trade and potentially Anthony Davis trade, although AD's not going to have a big haul, like he's not going to be a 5-pick trade. Anthony Davis probably get traded for less than Desmond Bane got traded for, which is a funny thing, but I think it's true. Giannis is like, he's an all-timer, right? He's 31 years old, but he's one of the best players of all time. He's I don't know what he is, but he's like probably fairly comfortably one of the 25 best players ever. Like, I think he's that good. So if you add him, is a force, right? He's an absolute force. But the question is, and I think the framing here from Goldsberry is very interesting, is like people around the league are watching what the Thunder did, and they weren't the team that traded for Giannis Antetokounmpo. They were the team in many ways that traded him away. Because when they traded Paul George in this like once-in-a-lifetime Kawhi Leonard kind of squeezes the Clippers to trade everything they possibly have to acquire him and Paul George in sort of one fell swoop. And so like the Thunder were able to trade Paul George for the value of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. That's a good deal. It only comes up so many times. Stay in the fight, get lucky. The OKC is probably better than just lucky, but again, like you keep things aligned and stay in the fight, get lucky. They do this, and they now they have this war chest of draft picks. They're incredibly young, and obviously they're going to get expensive at some point because they've paid their good young players. But like, it's this idea that the team, looking at the lens of the Clippers, is like they're the team that shelled out all these picks, and now here you are 6 years later, and it's like, oh no, versus like the Thunder, who are the team that acquired the young players. And in this modern NBA, where free agency basically doesn't exist for high-level players to change teams, and in the apron era, we've seen how challenging it is for really expensive teams to make trades during the season. And so what you're talking about is like the best way to add and to continue to supplement good teams is draft picks, either by virtue of trading those draft picks or adding high-level talent or adding, moderate-level talent, but on cost-controlled, cheap contracts that allow you to have, the AJ Mitchells of the world and on the low, so you can be really, really good. So you can be a problem. So I think like what I think is the interesting thing to look at here from Goldsberry's piece is, what is the appetite for everyone else in the league when it comes to acquiring star players? And do they look at how the Thunder did this in this copycat world that we live in the NBA and say like, well, I don't want to be the team that shells out 4 and 5 and all these draft picks. Like I want to hoard them because that's how you get good. And so I don't want to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo because that's what losers do. That's what the Clippers do, right? Like they don't want to be them. Like, you don't want to end up like those dudes in LA. You want to end up like those dudes, in the Dust Bowl. So I think that is the interesting thing. It's like the Thunder clogging up the trade market either by being just too good and scaring teams away from going for it, or just by like changing the paradigm. Is that these star trades are less appealing than the sort of young build organically control a million draft assets forever. Can you duplicate what OKC did? No, but you can follow it closer than say following what maybe past patterns of competition looked like. Okay, that's enough trade stuff. Trade season will be upon us for, I don't know, like I said, 55 days. It's fun. How teams are built is really fascinating. I love it. Albeit I'm not a big trade machine guy, but I am a how you build a team is fascinating guy. Speaking of a basketball team, the Blazers are going to play a basketball game at long last. They're going to play New Orleans Pelicans today as you're listening to this. So let's talk about it. And when we talk about the Blazers, we got to talk about injuries. So join me in that third segment, and we will talk about the Blazers injury report ahead of their meeting with the Pelicans. Join me there, won't ya? Before we do that, though, I want to tell you that today's program is brought to you by Game Time. Yeah, Game Time. The place that's going to get you into the World Cup, because it's coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. There's 48 teams in the field. The draw is set, and it's going to be massive, and you can go. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch. It's finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pull up the app, And the layout makes it super simple. Scroll through the matchups and you can look at, scan your seat, do a 360 view of your seat view before you buy anything. Pick a game, tap a section, have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. What you see is what you get pricing. And you will, if you want to go, Game Time is the way to do it. You can take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match and concert or event associated with the World Cup, along with Game Time. So download that Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app and make an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Game Time. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond, still listening to Locked on Blazers. I want to tell you, dear listeners, about the Everydayer Club. If you are an everyday listener, if you already do it every day, make it a part of your routine, it's time to take it up a level. You can go ad-free, an ad-free feed of this audio right here that you are listening to by joining the Everyday Club and get Locked On Blazers with no interruption. Plus, access to a members-only Discord and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonblazers.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. Okay, Blazers basketball game. They're going to play one against the Pelicans. Pelicans are the worst team they have the worst record in the NBA, the worst team in the Western Conference. They're not worse than the Wizards. I've watched the Wizards play this year. The Wizards are worse than the Pelicans. The Pelicans are not good. Hold on. The Pelicans are not good, but they're not worse than the Wizards. Straight up. They're not. In terms of like winning any random basketball game. But when you're talking about the Blazers, you talk about injuries. That's just the nature of it. And who they've got could be a little dicey. They could be short on centers. Do up, Reef. Stretch out, big guy. They might need you. Listed as out, notably Donovan Clingan. Thiago Splitter told reporters at practice held on Tuesday that Clingan did some drills and was a limited participant in practice, but when the injury report came out this afternoon, Donovan Clingan out with a lower left leg contusion. That's third straight game he's missed. If he played Sunday, he would get more than a week off since the injury. That seems, this is a weird bump in the schedule. So it like gives, you say, okay, well, one more game, but by one more game, you're getting 5 more days. So we'll see with Clingan. I would assume the way they talked about it, he seems like he's day to day, right? Drew Holiday is also out. Matisse Thybulle's also out. If you're scoring at home, Drew Holiday was listed 1 to 2 weeks. He would be reevaluated with a calf injury. But 2 weeks was last Friday, that's December 5th. 3 weeks will be this Friday, December 12th. Splitter told reporters that Drew was doing non-contact stuff, basically shooting stuff on the side and like watching practice, but not participating in any of the team stuff. Hard to imagine. So Drew's listed as out, not going to play Thursday. Hard to imagine based on that information that he plays Sunday. So I think the earliest we could see Drew come back would be Thursday's game. The Blazers have from Sunday to Thursday off. They play the Kings on November 18th. So I think Drew, the earliest he could come back is that November 18th game. Travis Demers, who was on the program yesterday, Blazers radio voice, kind of also pointed that game as the most realistic return date. And I think, judging by what we know now, seems about right. Matisse Thybulle, he's also out. His reevaluation date was 4 to 6 weeks from thumb surgery. Friday would be 6 weeks, the long end of the timeline. Again, he was shooting, no team stuff, no contact. So not going to play Thursday. Seems unlikely Sunday based on that if he's not doing contact stuff. So again, he might that next week, November 18th, I think is a date to circle for maybe Tease and Drew. And then questionable. Rob Williams is listed as questionable with illness. Missed the last game with an illness, but Splitter said he was a full participant in practice. So Rob's going to play. That sounds like he's going to play. Young Hunson also on the injury report with a face contusion. Importantly, the Blazers are not calling this concussion protocol. He's not entered the concussion protocol. They're calling it a face contusion. He got walloped. He got elbowed very hard in the face by a giant person, Zach Edey. We'll see what happens. I will note this. There was a contusion injury last year for Jeremy Grant. He gets elbowed really hard in the jaw by, I believe, Kyrie Irving. It was in that game against the Mavs, but it might not have been Irving who caught him. But it was in that game, and he missed 10 days with what they called like a jaw contusion. Sometimes like the tinfoil hat in me thinks that is like very clearly concussion stuff, that the Blazers are just like being coy with. I don't know all the rules with how concussion protocol works, to be quite honest, but and like contusion is such a vague thing that it could be like, yeah, he's like, he got hit so hard in the face that he can't, open his eyeball, or he can't like turn, he can't turn his neck or whatever without getting a headache. But it's like, if you get hit in the face hard enough that you're going to miss a game 5 days later, that strikes me as a potential brain injury and just something to circle. I would say the Blazers have a pretty spotty track record over the last 3 years of dealing with head trauma, specifically relating to Jeremy Grant, quite frankly. But like, that's like kind of unfair speculation. I will cut myself off there and say face contusion, Young Hansen, questionable. Hope he plays. Hope he's available to play. For the Pelicans, no Zion Williamson. He's out for extended period. But Jordan Poole has been upgraded to questionable. He has not played in a game since November 4th with a quad injury. Sounds like typically you miss a month or whatever it is, more than a little over a month. And then you get upgraded from out to questionable is an indicator you're going to play. So I would assume Jordan Poole plays. The Pelicans are horrendous on defense. They're awful, but they're not terrible on offense. Since firing Willie Green and putting James Abrego in the big chair, they're like a totally functional offensive team. I really like Jeremiah Fears. I loved Derek Queen during the draft process, and he has been balling. They just can't stop anyone. If the Blazers if they're gonna win this game, they're gonna win this game probably by just dropping a $135 on this team. But like the Pelicans can score. If you are vulnerable to giving up points, they can score on you. It's just there's no way. They do not have the personnel to stop you from scoring on the other end. And with all due respect to Jordan Poole, he ain't going to help that. So this isn't a must-win game because there's no such thing in December, but this is a should-win game. If the Blazers are going to get back on track, one of the ways to do that, to like get back to where they want to be and be consistently competitive, you beat bad teams even on the road. Beat bad teams even on the road. And so this is a should win. This is a high-level should win game. A weird long trip one-off in New Orleans, but this is a should win game. And the Blazers will be back in Portland on Sunday, and then they play 8 of 9 at home after following this Pelicans game. So a long little stretch to sort of get right in December. So next time you hear my voice, we will talk about the Pelicans game. You're listening to Thursday show, Friday's program after a Thursday evening game against the Pels. We will talk all things New Orleans, that showdown, everything that happened, and then get you set up for the weekend. It's what we do 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube. Real quick, maybe just normal speed. If you are listening to this podcast and you are an audio listener, I think the Everydayer Club is an awesome opportunity for you. Uninterrupted, ad-free versions of this podcast, 5 days a week, ad-free. Plus, you get access to the members-only Discord. And there's some national shows that you also get as a bonus for being part of the Everydayer Club. If you are someone who does listen to this show every day in the audio space, and quite frankly, the majority of you do listen in the audio space, I know how it works, consider it. $5 a month, $50 a year. It gets you uninterrupted versions of this episode. You can... advertisers, don't listen real quick. No more fast forwarding through ads that maybe you don't want to hear. Instead, you just get it raw and uncut, baby. Get it uninterrupted. So yeah, check it out. Check the link out. It is Locked On Blazers at lockedonblazers.supercast.com, and the link is in the episode description for this episode. Come back for tomorrow's program. We'll talk Pels. Tell your friends about the podcast. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.